When your loved one is in the hospital, it can feel like both of you have been transported to a foreign country where you don't speak the language and do not know the customs. Do you know what you can do to help your loved one receive the best possible care and avoid preventable medical issues if they are hospitalized? Continue watching for some important do's and don'ts that will help you and your loved one navigate a hospital stay so he or she can return home as soon as possible. Tara here from Aging Your Way. It is difficult to put into words how overwhelming and frightening this experience can be of having a loved one in the hospital. But knowing what to do and not do to advocate for your loved one can make it all a little easier. Remember, knowledge is power, and that is so true when it comes to navigating the healthcare system. On to the list of things you should do when your loved one is hospitalized. Number one, have a family member present at the hospital and in your loved one's room as much as possible. However, I recommend limiting it to 1 to 2 people at a time. More than 2 extra people in that small room can interfere with the healthcare workers' abilities to do their jobs effectively. And remember, your loved one needs their rest. Here's a bonus tip. Ask the nurses if there are little things that you can do to help your loved one, such as refill their water cup or straighten the bed sheets. Helping with little things like this will accomplish 2 things. One, it will reduce your frustration as well as your loved ones from waiting several minutes for a nurse to do these little things. And doing things like this for your loved one frees up the short-staffed nursing team to perform more complex tasks for your loved one and other patients in a timely manner. Number two, make sure that your loved one's allergies are highly visible to anyone walking in the room. Many hospitals have a whiteboard in each room, and it is there so the hospital staff can write important information like allergies on it. Your loved one's allergies should also be listed in their chart and on their hospital wrist bracelet as well. The third thing you should do is have all pertinent medical information for your loved one ready to share with the hospital staff as soon as possible after your loved one arrives at the hospital. If you don't currently have your and your loved one's medical information all together in one place, I highly recommend you do that ASAP. I will put a link in the description to a great tool I recommend you use called the Caregiver's Key, created by Kim and Mike Barnes, the founders of Parenting Aging Parents. A bonus tip related to this. Pertinent medical information also includes a copy of the medical power of attorney paperwork. By law, healthcare professionals are only allowed to share updates with individuals who have been listed on a release form that is signed by either the patient or their medical power of attorney. Unfortunately, saying that you are the decision maker or the power of attorney based on your relationship with your loved one is often not enough these days. Another thing you should do when your loved one is hospitalized is ask what medications your loved one is being given and why. I also recommend asking for updates when a medication is stopped or a new one is added. While you should always receive a medication list when your loved one is discharged from the hospital, it is reasonable for you to ask for a current medication list when they are a patient there as well. It is also important that you ask a nurse and/or doctor taking care of your loved one what is the best way for you to receive daily updates from the doctor. I recommend having a point person for the family who obtains daily updates and asks most of the questions to the healthcare professionals. I also recommend that person takes very good notes on the information they are given by the healthcare professionals. A related bonus tip is daily medical updates can be given to you by phone if the healthcare professionals have the paperwork I mentioned above in the third recommendation. You do not have to be at the hospital 12 hours a day waiting and waiting for the specialist to see your loved one in order for you to receive an update. You can ask for it by phone. Next, it's important that you make note of who's who amongst the healthcare staff. It can be confusing and overwhelming to keep track of who does what in the hospital, but I recommend you do your best to keep track by taking notes. There are certain questions that only certain people can answer for you. So write down their names and titles when they come into your loved one's room. This way you'll know who told you that important piece of information a few days ago, and you will know who to follow up with if a certain intervention is not effective. Another important thing to do is take care of yourself the best you can. Only you know what that looks like for you, but if you have a loved one in the hospital, lean on your support system. Say no to anything you can in your outside life and try to rest. Having a loved one in the hospital is extremely draining on all levels, emotionally, mentally, and physically. And the first few days after they come home are draining as well. So don't forget to take care of you. Lastly, when your loved one is in the hospital, you should absolutely ask the doctor questions. In my experience, a lot of people are hesitant to ask questions of the doctor overseeing their loved one's care. They've shared with me that either they completely trust the doctor to make all the right decisions, or they don't feel comfortable questioning a doctor. Sometimes, on the flip side, there are people who pepper the doctor with dozens of questions every day and demand answers to all of them, expecting the doctor to predict the future with 100% certainty. I recommend aiming for somewhere in the middle. Prioritize your questions and ask the most important ones first, recognizing that the doctor has a limited amount of time that he can spend with you. He has many patients. And I should note, I have not met a doctor yet who can accurately predict the future, so it's important to keep your expectations realistic. Feel free to comment below with any additional things you recommend doing when a loved one is in the hospital. Now for the don'ts, or the things I recommend you not do when your loved one is in the hospital. Number one, don't accept a recommendation or treatment plan that you know your loved one would not want. While some people who are hospitalized are completely coherent and able to make their own decisions, that is not the norm. Your loved one is in the hospital for a reason, and usually that reason, as well as the medications to treat it, leave them exhausted and groggy and unable to make sound decisions. They need you to advocate for them. So if a healthcare professional recommends something or does a treatment intervention you don't think is in the best interest of your loved one, please speak up. And please don't assume that the people taking care of your loved one will never ever make a mistake. Every single healthcare professional is a human, just like you and me. They are humans who get tired, distracted, and stressed out. While it's true that many healthcare professionals are highly trained humans with amazing expertise in the complex field of medicine, they are still humans nonetheless. So please don't hesitate to ask them to verify that they know your loved one's allergies, medications, the purpose of the next treatment or intervention, etc. It could literally save your loved one's life. And a bonus tip related to this, I firmly believe that a good healthcare professional will not be offended by your questions, I promise. Most of us love to answer questions and educate our patients and their loved ones. Why? Because we know that means you are engaged and invested in the healing process, just like we are. Another don't is don't be afraid to speak up. As I mentioned previously, it's very important to ask questions and advocate for your loved ones. That might include notifying the nurse if your loved one is in a lot of pain, or reminding the staff that your loved one is claustrophobic and needs medication before going into the MRI machine. Or it just might be a reminder to the nurses that your loved one doesn't like having their feet covered when they sleep. And last, please don't be rude and demanding to healthcare professionals taking care of your loved one. I completely understand the temptation to unload your frustrations on the professionals taking care of your loved one. You are exhausted and overwhelmed and at your wits' end. So when it feels like the doctor dismisses your questions or the nurse didn't come help your loved one off the toilet for 15 minutes, it can be very upsetting. Here's the thing. It is completely fine to be upset about those things. and share your frustrations with the doctor or nurse and their manager if that feels right to you. But I recommend doing your best to communicate in a calm, clear, and firm manner. It can feel good in the moment to yell at someone when you're frustrated, but the fact is, it's not going to help you or your loved one if you are rude and demanding to the hospital staff. By yelling rude demands and threats at the staff, you only succeed in making it more difficult for them to help you. If you think about it, could you really hear the concerns of someone who is yelling at you and threatening to sue you? Probably not. Much has been written and said about the high rate of burnout of healthcare professionals and the alarming shortages of doctors and nurses now and in the future. And it concerns me greatly, especially knowing there are no easy ways to improve the complex healthcare system that millions of people in the US depend on every day. There are things that all of us can do to make healthcare a little more tolerable for the people receiving care and the people giving the care. I believe that includes effective communication and taking responsibility for our actions. And that applies to all of us, the healthcare professionals and the healthcare consumers. I have been on both sides of this fence, both as a healthcare professional and as an advocate for my own loved ones who have been hospitalized. In my experience, communicating in a firm, kind, and respectful manner is always the best way to go. And a little compassion for the person you're talking to helps as well. In my next video, I will share effective strategies for communicating with healthcare professionals to ensure that you receive answers to your questions. I would love it if you would comment below with any do's or don'ts that you recommend when a loved one is in the hospital. More valuable tips and information like this is found at agingyourway.net under the blog tab in the post titled 12 Best Tips to Advocate for Your Hospitalized Loved One. I put a link in the description below. If you would like help with navigating any aspect of the complex healthcare system, please go to agingyourway.net to learn more about our Aging Advisor services under the Services tab. The initial 30-minute consultation is always free. Thank you so much for your time. Please don't forget to like and subscribe below as well.